go ahead and get started so that we don't run too much behind schedule today. Welcome, everyone. I'm Elisa Green. I'm with the NIH Work-Life Center. Hello. And I just have a couple of announcements to make before I turn you over to Hazel Osborne, our speaker today. First of all, you'll see from the cameras in the back that as for most of our seminars, we're videotaping and videocasting for people who can't make it here today. So we just ask if you're sitting at the main table and you have a question, if you go ahead and activate the microphone with a little button so that people can hear it. And those of you sitting on the periphery, I've asked Hazel to go ahead and repeat your questions. So you don't think she's simple-minded, she's just helping people out. So she'll repeat back those questions for people so that they can hear it on the videotape or videocast. The nice thing about this is that if you think this is fabulous and you go back and tell your coworkers about it, they can pick it up on the videocast website, or they can get the videotape from us for a 2-week loan period, and we can also get them additional copies of the handouts. Another piece of housekeeping is the packet that you have in front of you has an evaluation form. If you please make sure that you fill that out before you go. If you have to leave early, still fill it out, any comments that you have, and you can drop them with me at the table here. And there's a third thing I'm supposed to always announce that I always forget, and I'll remember in about 5 minutes, and then I'll have to come back and interrupt Hazel. I can't remember what it is. We have brochures from the Work-Life Center on the table there, LifeWork Strategies, who help us organize these seminars, and you'll see their name on the overheads here, are also responsible for the really great resource and referral services that we have for child care, elder care, personal finance, and legal issues. So if you're interested in any of those, we have brochures for them. We have a resource library, so if organizing yourself is a topic that you're interested in, we're shorthanded right now, so I wasn't able to get around to doing a bibliography for this, but we do have books in our library about getting yourself organized. We have a few of those, so you can stop down or email us and find out more about those books. And there is a schedule in your packet also of the full Faces and Phases of Life seminar series through the end of the year. So make sure you check that out. I want to thank those people who pre-registered. Most of you did this time. It's a huge help. I would never have been able to clear all of you through the door so quickly and make sure that everybody had materials. So whenever you're interested in the seminar, if you can please give us a call or send us an email to register. It's really, really helpful. I think that's all the announcements. Hazel, I forgot to bring up your little bio sheet, so I can't read the information. Sure. Hazel has a better microphone on. You have the lapel mic, so you'll be able to hear her better. Oh, here's the bio. Thank you. Hazel has been with us on many occasions now for doing seminars, and I'm always excited to have her here. She has degrees in psychology, sociology, and anthropology, and a graduate degree on research in work and family issues, and this is certainly a wonderful work and family issue that we're covering today. And she's been working in the DC metro area for more than a decade, offering consulting and training seminars on a variety of family and workplace issues. She's done everything from an Ask the Parenting Specialist booth recently at the NIH Parenting Festival for us to a series on improving your brain. So it's always exciting to have her here. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. Elisa, yes, I do know who I'm talking to. All right, now that I've totally destroyed your image of me as a professional, I want to welcome you all to organize your paperwork and electronic documents. I don't have much to add to what Elisa's already told you about LifeWork Strategies, which is the company that has contracted with NIH to perform these services, except I want to let you know a little bit about my personal experience with organization. Between my husband and I, we own 4 businesses, and I've been doing our taxes for the entire time that we've been married. But here's what really matters. I was audited by the IRS once, and I passed with flying colors and had everything I needed right there for the audit. So I personally consider that my best qualification to do this seminar. We have a lot of material to cover today, so I'm going to be moving right along. But please, as you have questions, don't be afraid to ask them, and we will try and work it all in. If I don't get to all your questions before the end of the seminar, come see me afterward, And please, if you do have to leave early, that's fine. Don't worry, I will not take offense. But do take a minute to fill out the evaluation that is in your folders to let us know what we're doing well and what we need to do better. Now, as I go down to our first screen to talk about the outcomes that I hope you'll take away from this seminar, I want you all to ask yourselves the question that I have on the flip chart up here, which is, for those of you who can't see it, after your computer and your telephone, what is the most important piece of office equipment that you have? You don't have to answer that question out loud. Just think about what's the most important thing after your computer and phone. And we'll go down to talk about what it is that we are hoping to accomplish today. First, I want to focus in, and we'll use a couple of tools to do this, on what your concerns, the stressors that you personally are dealing with as far as organizing your workspace and your documents. We're going to be introducing a tool for you to use to organize and a system to use. Hopefully, you will come out of here having determined which papers and documents you do need to keep and which not, and how to decide on that. And we will at least get the beginning going of establishing a personal filing system for you. So that is what I'm hoping to accomplish. I want to begin with that first goal of identifying what it is that you personally are in need of, or where your documentation organization needs lie. But let me just caution you before we get started on that. This is not a training about computer systems for email or personal documents. There is material on that, and I will touch on that, but that is not the primary focus. It's a tool-based seminar. Ultimately, you're going to have to decide which of the tools I present will be most useful for you. Probably the most important thing we'll do is talk about how to decide what to keep and where to put it. And the most important thing to let you know is that you're the one who's got to keep up the system. Starting the system is easy. How many of you bought day timers or Palm Pilots maybe at the beginning of the year that you were bound and determined you were going to use every single day? And you know, they're great tools, but you have to do it. It's not just enough to have it, you have to do it. Now let me read you some scary statistics. In his book Margin, Richard Swenson lets us know that the average person spends 1 year searching through desk clutter, looking for misplaced objects in your lifetime. Okay, a whole year. Probably you can think of something you'd rather do with that year. The average person spends 8 months opening junk mail. That's paper junk mail. That doesn't even include spam. The average person spends 3 years in meetings, is interrupted 73 times a day at work. Some of you may even have more interruptions than that. And the average person opens 600 pieces of paper mail every year. Just to give you a little more information on simple paper, this doesn't even include electronic mail. 600 million pages are printed every day. That's enough for a file cabinet about 170 miles long. 175 billion faxes are sent every year, and faxes are becoming obsolete. File cabinet sales increase 20% every decade. So if you feel like you're getting buried, it's not just your imagination. Now, if you would please turn to page 1 in your packet, hopefully you will find a little survey for yourself titled, "Are You Organized?" Please take a minute and fill that out. This is just for your own use. It will not be collected or graded. Just something to get you thinking. You'll see there's a space at the bottom of the page there to fill out your organization goals. You don't have to come up with 4 of them. We just give you space for 4. 1 or 2 is absolutely fine. Now I'm going to move on. That doesn't mean you need to stop writing, but my goal is to stop on time today. So I don't want to take too much time for this survey. The point of it is to kind of help you focus in on what your needs are. As you looked over that checklist, did anybody run across something that gave you a new thought or maybe a little new insight into what your needs are organizationally? Anything there you maybe hadn't thought of before? How about the goals? Would anyone be willing to share one of their organizational goals? Yes?
My goal is to get it off my desk. I'm just buried with paperwork and not enough file space.
Have you done any reading about feng shui at all and space arrangement? One of the principles is that every horizontal surface should at least be 1/2 free. So, so you're onto a good thing there. That's a very good goal, and I think one that we can help you meet today. I want to emphasize to you, and this kind of comes through in the survey, that being surrounded by clutter and not knowing what to do with it can lead to procrastination, confusion, and stress. And that's why we have some of the questions on there that we do. What happens when you don't manage clutter? We call entropy, and probably you remember from science class way back when. Entropy is the chaos that things descend into unless you organize them. And it gets its own life. It kind of keeps going and getting worse and worse and worse the more you neglect the organization. Now let me ask you to do one more little thing with that piece of paper. Please write a little note to yourself on the bottom of it about what you're going to do with the extra time you have once you become more organized. What are you going to do with that extra time? This might be the most important part of this seminar because it helps you focus on what you get out of being organized. Hopefully it'll be better up here.
Well, I can't hear you. Well, I see, and then I can't see that.
Then you're in a good place.
No, I'm not. Yeah, but one second.
Some of the things that you should get out of becoming more organized are less stress, better decision making. Okay, it's going to be easier to make decisions. You'll make better decisions. Your productivity will increase, and you won't lose things or spend time looking for things. Hopefully, these points and whatever you wrote on the bottom of your survey will motivate you to go through this process. It's going to be a pain to get organized. There's no way around that. It does have some time cost associated with it, but it does pay off. What we mean by being organized is having a system for managing your documents and having a place where you can put them, either electronic or physical. The areas that usually need to be organized include your desk, as we've already heard, papers, files, and computer folders. Now I want to add to that the fact that you have to understand what clutter is. Clutter can take a lot of different guises. Anything that does not support your environment or your job is clutter. We say environment because you do need a few things, pictures of the family and, you know, a few special things that are just yours. That supports your work too, though. Stuff that gets in the way is clutter. What clutter is underneath all that is stuff that you have postponed decisions about, and this is a very important point. If you have a big stack of stuff on your desk or under your desk or next to your desk, chances are a lot of it is stuff that you really don't know what you should do with. It's not that you haven't done it, you don't know, or maybe you haven't decided it. To focus in a little bit more on that, I want to ask you to go on to page 3 in your packet, and You'll find there another little questionnaire to focus on your individual needs, analyzing your current systems. And if you would please take a couple minutes to fill that out for yourself too. This hones in on your real problem areas. Oh, it is page 2? Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, I am going to continue speaking, but once again, that doesn't mean you have to stop writing. In fact, I want to invite you to keep your packets open to that page for the next few minutes. And as I speak, concentrate on the 2 areas that you might have put down when you answered question number 2, what's not working, and question number 4, what's causing problems. As I speak, try and address in your mind whatever I'm saying to those particular problems so we can make this as useful as possible. Couple of things I want to mention before we go on to managing paper and documents. There is no one right or wrong way to be organized. If you're organized, if you can get at what you need, then it's working. So please don't feel like you have to adopt a system that doesn't feel comfortable to you. Just take the pieces that work. Secondly, realize that organization comes naturally to some people. But if you're not naturally organized, it is a skill that can be learned. This is not something that is a gift that gets bestowed just on certain people. Finally, being organized should not be seen as much as a goal as a vehicle. It's more of a vehicle to get you where you want to go than a goal in itself. So that clear desk that we would like to have, lovely as it's going to be, isn't your ultimate accomplishment, of course, at work. It's just what enables you to accomplish at work. Well, let's talk about some basic ideas behind paper and document management, what we call the 4 S's of paper and document management. And the very first one is a system. You've got to have a system that automates your paper and document management so that you're not having to make a decision about every single thing that crosses your desk or computer. You just make decisions about categories and then handle everything in that category in the same way. That saves you a lot of time and energy for more important things. The second aspect is sorting, and that's where the decision making comes in. How do you decide where certain things should go. Third is stashing, where you actually take the step of putting the items where they belong. How many of you have a bunch of stuff that you can think of in your office right now, and you know where it should be, and it just hasn't been put there yet? Yes, okay, we're all guilty of that. And finally, this is the most difficult one, as I mentioned earlier, staying on track or maintaining your system. You have to keep it going. And I suggest that you actually book time into your calendar to keep your system going, especially until it becomes automatic. Maybe in a couple of years you don't have to write it down, but for now it's a good idea. We have adopted and really encourage you to use this model, Winston's TRAF model. Stephanie Winston developed this. It's based on the idea of traffic, and there's a traffic jam on your desk. You've got all this traffic coming in, and you've got to direct it. So this is like a paper or electronic document traffic management system. It's based on the idea that you look at something once, and the first time you see it, you decide what to do with it. This relates back, maybe some of you have heard, to the old paper document management method called touch it once, where you only touch it one time. That's probably not very realistic. But what does need to happen that first time you see it is you decide which way it's going to go. And then take action depending on that. The TRAF system lets you do what we call a first level sorting. And the first item on it is to toss or delete. Now this gets back to the question I had up here earlier. What is the most important piece of equipment in your office? Did anybody think garbage or a recycling bin, if you're going to be politically correct about it? Other than your computer and your phone, a way of getting stuff out of there. Trash or recycling is the most important piece of equipment that you have in your office. Statistics indicate that about 40% of what comes to you through paper or email you can immediately get rid of. You don't need to save, you don't need to file it, just throw it away or recycle it. We've also found that for the most part, 20% of what you get is stuff that really needs your attention and action. So you get 40% that you can toss, 40% that you might want to read or refer to somebody else, and 20% that you actually have to do something about. So try and keep those numbers in mind as you adopt your organizational system. Okay, that's the T, toss or delete. The R stands for read and refer. Now this is something that's come across your desk that maybe you want to know a little bit more about. Maybe you need one or two pieces of information from it, not the whole thing. Maybe you need to pass it on to members of your team or someone else that you think might benefit from it. So that's the R aspect of the TRAF system. The A is to act. And as I said, 20% of mail needs your action, roughly. That's on average. You can create an action box on your desk or an action file on your computer. You might want to do both like I do for things that need to be acted on right away or that you need to act on but not immediately. And finally, the F is for file, and that simply means something that you hang on to and put in a place where you can get it again. The point of a filing system is to have a way to find something that you need after you've put it away. Materials that you need to use include a wastebasket, an action box, a referral box, and a read box, and finally a box for stuff that you're going to file, if you don't have the luxury of time to file it immediately. I want to refer you for the moment to page 4 of your packet to look over. The one packet is just the overheads. You don't need to refer to that. Page 4 of the exercise packet, which has in it a list of common filing mistakes. And it's good to be aware of these. Okay. We think we have to read it all first. We do not. We don't remember how we categorize something. Maybe some of you, for example, file according to project instead of type of project. And so you have to remember, now what project was I working on where we used such and such a tool, and go through them all. So that can be a difficult mistake. Creating the system but not keeping up with it. Don't make the mistake of creating a different file for every single document or every type of document. You will never be able to remember all of the files that you have. I also urge you to avoid long, convoluted titles on your files. It's too hard to figure out what they are. And then filing on an indefinite basis. What I mean by that is, don't file unless you have a plan for when you can get rid of it. Anybody have files dating back to the 80s? Or maybe the early 90s? Who is ever going to look at those files? If the answer is no one, it's time to recycle them. So those are just a few basic mistakes that we tend to make. And as you can see, we have a little more detail on that page about the TRAF model. What most people find difficult about this model is the very first step, and that is tossing. How to decide what you can get rid of and what you can keep. Now, when you ask somebody, why is it so hard to throw, for example, in the case of my husband, the pay stubs from the job he had when he was in high school in the garbage? Okay, what makes it hard to let go of things? The first response is, I might need that someday. You know, and unless you think about it hard, you can use that as an excuse for a long time to postpone a decision about whether or not you need it. The second reason that people tend to hang on to things is sometimes if they've experienced a lot of loss in their lives, it's very, very hard for them to let go of anything. It's just, you know, they tend to be too fearful. And as a matter of fact, people who are very extreme about that end up with visits from the health department because their houses become crowded with barrels of magazines and stuff they bought at yard sales and gifts someone gave them that they were afraid to take back or re-gift. Anyway, all of those things can make it hard to get rid of stuff. Finally, if you tend to be a creative thinker, you may be in the habit of keeping stuff that gives you ideas. Oh, I might need that if I ever want to X, Y, Z. However, if you don't get rid of about 80% of what comes your way sooner or later, you will find that you can't be creative at all because you will be too stressed out by what you're buried underneath. So your long-term goal should be to get rid of 80%. But as I said, only 40 goes out in the beginning. 40% you file for a while and then get rid of, maybe in a year, 2 years, when a project is finished, whatever. There are certain papers that you don't throw away. Can anyone think of stuff that no matter what you need to hang on to? Taxes, okay. Yes, I just gave you a good example of why, too. The IRS will tell you only need them for 7 years. However, most accountants tell you hang on to them forever. They really don't take up that much space. It's okay. Anything else? Yes, a paid-off mortgage. You definitely want to hang on to any kind of documentation that has to do with financing. I recently attended a settlement, as a matter of fact, and it was put on hold because a loan for a car in 1996, which had been paid off, had not been cleared from the person's record. And they weren't able to go through with the closing until that was resolved. Nasty business. So that's a very good example. Anyone else? Yes?
When you go shopping, you should save the receipts for a while in case you want to return the item. You may not take it back unless you have the receipt.
Excellent example, and you've brought up something that I want to mention in particular. Any kind of office equipment that you buy, very often if you need any kind of technical support, you have to give them the number that is on the receipt to get the technical support. So that's particularly important. Finally, legal documents. You know, divorce settlements, wills, that kind of thing. You definitely want to hang on to passports. And I urge you professionally to hang on to any letters of recommendation that you get and any positive evaluations. You never know when they might come in handy. Okay. We have a few more thoughts for you about making that decision. You'll find them both on this overhead and in a little bit more detail in your packet on page 5. You don't need to look at that now. You certainly can if you want to. The first question to ask yourself is, did I ask for this? How many of you have gotten subscriptions of magazines or newsletters? You don't know where it came from. Someone wants to send it to you for free for 3 or 4 months and then somehow talk you into subscribing to it. Good one to throw away. So did you ask for the document? Very often if you are involved in a work project very peripherally and the group would like to keep you in the loop, they will send you these documents. Look at it, throw it away unless there is a specific thing in there you feel you may need. Second question, is this the only place you can get it? The answer is virtually always no, it is not. Unless it's a love letter or a picture from your child. Somewhere there exists a duplicate of it. And it's perfectly okay to go find that duplicate if you need it and take the chance of getting rid of the document. If you lost the document, would you notice? Chances are, if you had a fire in your office tomorrow, you'd probably only miss half a dozen things or so. And everything else you might like to have handy, but you won't actually need. Is the information current enough to be useful? The answer by the time you get it, especially if it's on paper, is usually no. Usually it's after the fact, but not always. What are the uses for this document? If it's not something you need to act on immediately or you'll need to refer to, you may want to pass it on to somebody else. And that's a good way to get in the habit of getting those documents off your desk. And finally, what's the worst thing that could happen if you didn't have the document? Think about the most valuable document you have in your office right now. Does everybody have a document in mind? Okay, your resume. What's the worst thing that would happen if you lost that?
You need to apply for another job, and you don't have your resume, there's no way that they could hire you.
You'd have to recreate it.
Recreate it.
That's right. But you probably could recreate it.
Yeah, but you might leave out important documents.
That's true. That's true. So here the worst case scenario, we're not talking losing our domicile or our job. We're just talking about having to do a little extra work. Any other examples of the most important document in your office?
Yes. I think this is more important than anything. The files for the timekeeping records.
Yes, that's an excellent
Yeah,
example.
You have to get paid.
Yes, you do. And that is a good example of something that's important. But again, something you probably could recreate if worst case scenario you lost it. So this is just one more aspect of looking at things that will hopefully help you get comfortable with letting go of them. Any questions about which documents to keep and which to toss? Okay, now can everyone think of something you currently have in your office that you could throw out right now? How about some examples? You know what's in there. What could you get rid of right now?
Old calendars?
Great example, old calendars. Anything else? Yes? Professional journals. That's the kind of thing that, when are you actually going to use it? Yeah, if your pile is that high, everything below the top 2 inches is out of date anyway. So, good example. Old reports from activity. Yeah, and that's something that you could get from somewhere else if you needed them. So why keep them in your office? Here's another little feng shui tip. Anybody here tend to keep piles of documents on the floor? We're all a little guilty of that, or maybe we fill up our bookshelves starting at the bottom and working our way up. Supposedly, that leads to being pulled down and feeling depressed. So if you will just go clear the floor in your office of documents you don't need, you'll be less depressed and feel better. Let's go on to talk about how to decide what to do with papers that you do keep, all right? 4 tips. First of all, scan it and highlight the important sections. don't feel you need to read the whole thing right away. That just isn't practical with our time being as valuable as it is. Just scan it and highlight. I usually like to use just a highlighter down the side instead of searching out individual words. If it's a paper document, you can put a red dot or a post-it or whatever little symbol you would like to on the top right-hand corner to remind yourself this is something I want to get back to. If it is a computer document, you can put it in your read or action folders on your computer. Make a decision, whatever it is, about what you're going to do with it right away. And finally, schedule time every day to go through that action or read and refer box. Start at the end of the list one day or at the bottom of the pile and the top of it the next day. And that way, you know, gravity doesn't take over and form this little mushy pile of junk at the bottom of your action box. Okay, I want to talk more about managing the action box. Is everybody ready to move on? Can you see yourself applying these things so far? Okay.
Where are you?
We're just going down to the next overhead. Managing your to-do box. How do you want to do that? Okay. First of all, you make a decision about what to do with the piece of paper. Then think about what you're going to do, whether or not to keep it, then what you're going to do with it. Write your answer on the paper or post it. If you're filing it, remember I said put something on the upper right corner. Put the name of the file it belongs in on that piece of paper before you ever set it into your to-file box. If you need more than 10 minutes to read it, you want to put that in your read and refer box. Then when you go to a meeting, remember we said you spent 3 years of your life in meetings? Take that file along. Because chances are you're going to be doing just what you did when you got here today, right? Most of you had to wait a few minutes. And you were probably sitting here maybe looking through the materials because we provided you with great reading materials. But most meetings aren't like that. So you can go bring that with you and read it. Of course, you can also read in waiting rooms and that kind of thing too. That's always a good use of time. If you need more thought, put that red dot on there and hang on to it and review that to-do box every day. Any questions about any of this? Yes?
Is the to-do box and the action box the same thing?
Yes. Yes. Different titles, but the same idea. Sorry about that. Okay. What are some examples of actions that you need to take with documents you typically get? Think about your own job. Yes?
Answer questions.
Okay, people have questions and they need the information from you. Good. Yes?
Share information with another group or with the staff.
Right, you're a link for this information, so you need to pass that on. Anything else? Some of the other examples we hear, yes?
So I've signed them. I have to sign them or
So,
approve them.
okay, so you have to approve whatever it is, not only information but also an okay. You may also have to enter information into your computer based on it. You might have to photocopy stuff. You might need to take notes on it. So these are some of the things we mean by action. Okay. I think we've gone through that pretty well. Now I want to move on to file management. Things that you need to have. Hanging files. I did not know that files could hang until my third professional job. So the first couple jobs I had to dig through files that kept falling back in the back of my file drawer. Get hanging files. It can be real handy to have color-coded hanging files. The only weak spot in that approach is what if you run out of the right color? Suddenly the office stops ordering them. So keep that in mind if you want to count on color. Regular folders, of course. Again, you can use color if you want. Box bottom folders are great for those big projects that you kind of want to keep all in one place. Magazine boxes also work very well for them. You know the kind of boxes they make for storing periodicals. Get them at office supply stores. Tabs and labels, of course. For your computer filing system, you need directories, folders, filters, and other tools depending on what programs you use. But hopefully everybody has some kind of a scenario on your computer right now where you have folders and subfolders that is somehow logical. They might need to be rearranged depending on how you redo your files. Think about 3 different kinds of files. You want to consider historical, action files, and confidential files. Historical files are simply files that you needed before, maybe related to a project you've done in the past. You don't need it right now, but you may need to refer to it. Action files, things you are working on right now. How about confidential files? Can anybody give me some examples of files that you keep that are confidential? Personnel, excellent example. Anything that has to do with evaluation, references, and so forth. Payroll, absolutely. Contract files are often confidential. Contracts that you have with vendors, maybe that you use. The terms of the contract.
Oh,
Yes.
a question. Can you have files that need to be locked up,
Absolutely.
where no one else can get into that?
We recommend that you have one drawer in your desk that does have a lock on it for keeping just that kind of item. And it may be something that's personal for your own use that you don't want to share with colleagues. And maybe some of you have that. For example, if you're applying for another job and you have some information, you might want to keep that confidential. Okay. Determine categories is the next step. That's going to vary from job to job so much that it's almost impossible to discuss in a large group, but a couple of examples might help. Can anyone share with us just some general categories that have worked for you in your filing system? Yes?
Administrative.
Okay, administrative categories. And can you think of some examples of the material that you would put in there?
Travel. I know I have travel in there. Budget, parking.
All the nuts and bolts kinds of stuff that make it possible for you to work. Okay, good example. Anybody else? Yes?
Disease topics arranged alphabetically.
Okay, great example. Disease topics arranged alphabetically. So depending on what kind of work you do, that could fit in very, very well. You might also find that your categories that work best are in order of projects that you have worked on. Or it may be work that you have done for a particular client, or work that you're preparing for a certain kind of funding. You may categorize by funding source. It really depends on the kind of work you do. Is everybody with me on this? Can you visualize categories that will work for your own type of job? Is anybody having a problem coming up with categories? Okay, good, because I'm going to ask you to do that on paper in a few minutes. Okay. Next tip, very important. Label it according to what is in there, not where you got it. Sources of files change over time. That's why it's a good idea not to use the source as the label for it. Alphabetical order, absolutely, as we heard with the disease example. We've talked about using color-coded files. This is very important. Make a master list of the names of files. This is in case someday you don't come into work. And that can happen to any of us, right? And one of your colleagues desperately needs something from you. If you have on the front of your file drawer where things are, what's in there, how to find them, that person will be able to do that. The same automatically happens with your folders and subfolders on your computer, right? Anybody could go into your directory and hopefully figure out what things are based on the names. But it doesn't automatically happen with paper files. And once again, keep up with the system. Anybody have any questions about managing paper documents at this point?
Can you give an example of label according to what it is, not where you got it?
Okay. Let's use vendors for an example, because that's something that comes from the outside all the time. If it is a bill for food, you would have that under, catering services, not such and such a vendor. Because then if you change vendors, all that information is in another file. Whereas it's going to be a lot more useful for you, let's say you need to find out how much you need to order for a certain event. You need to go back to whatever the catering source was.
To make it more general.
Exactly, yeah. Here's another example. We heard about medical journals and a pile, whoops. Does anybody have a paper towel? Thank you so much. That's an argument for bottled water, isn't it? This is going to do, but if anybody has more, that would be better. Thanks very much. I think that'll get it. Okay. Medical journals. Let's say you subscribe to a journal about a certain topic, and you subsequently decide it's not that great a publication, you want to switch to something else. You're going to go with the disease model of filing that we heard about and file that according to what the topic of the journal is, not where it came from. So let's say you subscribe from one educational institution to begin with, and then you switch to another one. You don't want to have University of Pittsburgh Journal on your file label. You want to have, infectious diseases. And then if it switches from one to another source, you've got that information all in the same place. Is this making sense to everybody?
Yeah.
You following along with this? Okay, you want it to be general enough. The whole point of the filing system is to be able to find something later. So as you're designing it, think about under what circumstances do I need to lay my hands on this and use that kind of a title, okay? All right, are we ready to move on to electronic, or are there any other questions about paper? Yes?
Could you talk a little bit, or maybe you're going to do this in the electronic part on filters?
Yes, we are. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. You can only use mental filters with paper documents unless you can get your name removed from mailing lists. That's always a good thing to try. But we use them a lot more with electronic. I'm going to go on, okay? All right. Your electronic filing system in many ways is a mirror of how you work with paper. Hopefully it's easier and less cumbersome. The problem with electronic files is that they are much easier to postpone decisions about than paper is. You don't have a bigger stack on your desk because you've ignored your email, right? So there's a danger there. It calls for more self-discipline than paper documents. That's one of the important differences between the two. Once again, you need to list the types of files that you need. Everyone probably needs an administrative file like we heard about, but depending on your particular job, you may have particular needs. Categorize them based on the needs of your job, and when you sort them, they'll automatically be sorted by date. You can also sort into subfolders by subject. So that's usually the most accessible. That's usually the most user-friendly, to sort by subject and then let them arrange themselves by dates. You need those kinds of organizational tools both in your computer folders and in your email folders. And this is where a lot of folks fall down. They've got their directory, their folders and subfolders beautifully in their documents, but in their email, it's a mess. They're looking for something they can't possibly find if they don't have folders and files. Move your email, whatever you want to save, to the appropriate folder. Now, a question came up last time I did this seminar. If something has been forwarded to you, you often cannot go in and change the title, so it makes it hard to put it in a certain place. What you can do is forward it to yourself again, and at that point, you can change the title. So that gives you a lot of control over being able to move your email around so that it's easily recognized. Does everybody work with some kind of an email filtering or management system that lets you search for things alphabetically? Okay, we do have a tool that we discuss, and I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, but on page 9, you'll find in your handout packet a description of how to use message rules tool in Outlook, and also Boilerbase, which is the automated email organizer. And that's something that's a standalone product which you can use. Page 9 of the worksheet packets, not the overheads. Yeah, that's right. It is a little bit. Yeah, that's there. You go. In that bunch that you have in your right hand.
This one?
Yeah, this one, page 9. Whoops. Next one after this.
Oh.
I'm sorry. For, I'm sorry, I don't know. Do you work primarily with a Mac? Probably most tools come in 2 different versions, but I can't swear to it, so but something to check out. It's an excellent tool. What I really like about Boilerbase is that it can do a search not just for words in the title, but also in the text of the email. And not all email filtering tools do that. So something to refer to later. Okay. That gets us on to talking about automated filters. Anybody have any questions about automated filters that you're currently using? I can try to address them, or we can ask someone in the group who knows the answer to address them. There are a lot of different ones. How many of you are using filters on your email?
What is a filter?
A filter is a tool that pulls out certain items that you want it to and either gets rid of or hides the rest of them.
How do they know what to pull out?
Well, you tell it what to pull out. You set it up. You set up filter rules for it, and then it works on those. And of course, if it doesn't work, you can change what the rules are. So it's a really handy system, but I see that not too many of you are working with that at this point. I'm not going to dwell any more on it. If you want to talk about it more, come and catch me after the session. Those of you who are using it, okay. Once again, you do need to create an index of your file names, and that's usually pretty easy with your documents on your computer, maybe a little bit more difficult with email. And of course, once again, you do need to keep that maintained every single day. Everybody using spam filters? I hope we at least have that. Okay. I have a few more tips for you about electronic files. Let me flip back to... Okay. We've talked about the filter rule book a little bit. Other thing to keep in mind, for those of you who do email at work and home, you probably want to have 2 different email addresses so that you are not hearing about your daughter's kindergarten teacher's room project when you are looking for an agenda for a meeting you're on your way out the door to. Use an autoresponder for both when you can't get back to people so they're not constantly hounding you, particularly if you're going to be out for a couple of days, and spam filters. Most email programs save a file of everything you have sent out, and if you don't regularly clean that out, it slows your machine down a lot. So delete that folder regularly, and use template functions to send out things that you routinely have to use, such as meeting agendas, thank you notes, resume. There are templates for the... They're wonderful tools. Most of us don't bother learning how to use them, right? You know they're in there somewhere, but you never use them. And then when you do create these things, you're having to reinvent the wheel. So don't be afraid to use a template. Even go out online and get updated ones. Yes?
Now it's the paper, the things that you know you need to get back to that you don't really want to go through right away.
Uh-huh.
Is there a way to earmark those online so you don't end up with 2,000 things in your inbox?
There certainly is. As a matter of fact, one of the tools that you have some detail about in your packet is exactly that. And just give me a second to find it for you. Okay, what happened to that? You can create a file like that, or what I think would work better is to write an email to yourself every day, and then as you open it, change it, and then it will come back to you. Okay, here it is on page 6. An automated tool to help with paper documents, File Folder Organizer. You don't need to do any document scanning for it, but it does. The drawback to it is you have to enter information, and to me that's enough of a drawback that I wouldn't use it. But if you find that it works better for you, it's a great tool. It helps you keep track not just of what you need to be doing, which I think is what your specific question is about, but everything that you have. No? Okay.
No, emails.
Okay.
When somebody sends me an email, I think, gosh, I need this, but it doesn't really fit anything, but I'd like to look at it later this week.
Yeah.
Is there a way to say,
Keep as new. or forward it to yourself. Yeah,
You can also flag it.
highlight it in some way. Yeah, that's a good idea too.
Are you on a Mac or PC? There's a little thing up at the top on the bar that's got a flag looking picture. You can just go to your email and go up to the top and hit flag, and it puts a little flag right on it, and you see it immediately.
Thank you very much. Okay, can you speak into the microphone and say that again? The question initially, excuse me, I forgot to repeat the question is, what do we do about emails that we get that we want to do something with or read over again or pay some attention to? We can't deal with them right now. We need to come back to them maybe in a couple of days. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you're on a PC, there's a way to flag it.
You had it on. There you go.
There's a way to flag it. If you just go up to the top bar, I can't remember if it's under something or if it's, you just see the little flag, but you just put that right by the email, and that way you can see at a glance. Okay.
There are more details about electronic filing systems on page 7 of your handout packet. Once again, you don't need to turn to that. Really what it is just a reminder of everything I've said about electronic documents. I want to invite you to turn to page 6 of your packet to talk a little bit more about filing in general. It's the title of it is Piles to Files. Let's review that for a minute. And that actually is the page we just looked at for the question we had, File Folder Organizer. I mentioned 3 major types of files that you should consider. Once again, you want to identify what you need files for and then come up with categories that make sense. A few more tips on labeling. Use nouns when you label. For some reason, that's easier to understand when you go back to them. Nouns. Arrange them in alphabetical order. We talked about color. Master list of names that we have on the outside of the filing cabinet, I mentioned that earlier too. Use that to decide where to put things. And every time you revise it, come back and print out a new master list. That was the one tip that I wanted to make sure and get to that we hadn't. Is everybody feeling pretty comfortable with what I've told you so far? Okay, let's try an exercise then that will get you going. If you would please turn to page 3, I think it is, of your packet. I've been flipping back and forth so much, I'm having a little trouble finding it. Okay, my personal filing system worksheet. I'd like to take a few minutes for us to work on this and go back to then a few more tips about electronic documents and weeding. But I want to make sure we have plenty of time for this. Please take a few minutes to list the kinds of documents or papers that should go into your files or computer files. Think about the papers that are on your desk right now. What types of documents are they? They might include things like invoices, committee reports, requests for information, journals. Anyone want to add a few examples of the kinds of documents that you get that are on your desk right now? Yes.
Policy and procedure.
Okay. Good example. Yes.
I'm wondering what you do when, I'll try to explain this.
Okay.
Like I'm a conference manager,
Okay.
and I have so many different areas that have a zillion details within each area. And I'm not sure how to file things.
That
There's
is
a lot
very
of things
difficult.
that together, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. For example, let's say you were comparing 4 different conferences. They may be about wildly different subjects. They may have totally different populations coming to them, but they may be using the same facility. So they have all that in common, and so you can refer to any one of them to get information about the facility. Am I onto what you're talking about here?
Yeah, but I wouldn't do it by the facility,
Right.
like it's more like seasonal, I guess. Like I have
Okay.
a big one in the spring, and then I have sometimes 6 different conferences in the fall.
Right, right. So you probably want to file by event. In other words, if you know it's coming up at a certain time, and as a matter of fact, I think I had the same question at another site. Yes, I did. And you know what? It was a person who did conference management at a hotel. What she found most useful for her was to file by month which events typically happen in May, which events usually happen in June, and so forth. And then she can refer to the previous year for all the information about that event. Have you tried doing it by month? Or does your...
No, I haven't, because
doesn't lend itself
sometimes
to
I have more, I might have 3 conferences in a given month, but they all pertain to travel, to the logistics, the personnel that are going to go with you on your conference, how you're going to ship it.
Okay, yeah, very, very complicated. You almost need to put everything you possibly can in computer files so you can do cross-referencing. Because one of the lovely things about computer files is you can have copies of the same file in different places. For your paper files, it may almost be worth making photocopies some of the time, but I would mostly, if you possibly could, rely on computer files as much as possible. Is that what you've tried? Have you tried doing that, or is it mostly paper?
A lot of it is paper because I have to get the form to fill it out to register for it, and then, you know, my carpet, my lighting, all those kind of things.
Right. Stuff that probably isn't automated at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very, very difficult thing. I think my inclination would be to go with monthly and then use subdividers for the different events that are happening that month. But the other thing you can do to cross-file in paper files is to use color coding within the file. Like for it, what I'm trying to say is like use those little tabs that you can get and color code, for example, all your facility information for every single event in blue. And then, you know, all you have to do is look through your files to see all the blue tags sticking up to know, well, that's where I can go if I need information on the facility that event takes place in, or if I want to compare facilities. Is that making sense?
Okay, like if I have, say, shipping, shipping would be blue no matter what project it's on.
Right, exactly.
Something like that.
Right, and if you want to get even more, I'll say, hair splitting, you can use those little tabs sticking up with a note, you know, UPS or whatever type of shipping that you use, so that you can see from sticking up, the flag sticking up, where the shipping is and who you used for it, rather than go digging through. At some point, your file management system becomes a reproduction of the entire file, and you don't want to get that detailed, but detailed enough so you can get the information that you need. And my guess is the information that you need is what you're currently working on, and what do we do before that I need to sort of reproduce, or that I need to go back to set it up again. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's probably your best bet if you have to use paper stuff, and I'm sure there's no way around that most of the time.
Yeah.
The kind of multitasking that you have to do for conference management is probably one of the most complicated jobs there is. You're probably one of those INTJs on the Meyer-Briggs, you're a super, super organized person, but really it is hard keeping all that stuff straight. So you have an unusually complicated situation there. Yes?
Yeah. You mentioned that it's important to determine what to file, what is essential, and
Right.
so on. But what about some common examples in the day-to-day, like at home? Because you also mentioned like things that you should hang on to. But what about, you know, like your monthly payments related to credit cards or electricity, whatever?
Right.
The instructions that comes with equipment, warranties, things like that.
Okay, let's address personal records for just a couple of minutes, because I'm sure a lot of you probably are thinking about that in the back of your mind as we talk about your work situation and documents. As long as the bill that you get reflects the payment that you made last time. Your records are current with the company, so it's not necessary to save all of the bills unless you need them for tax purposes. Particularly if you register as a customer online, you can access that material electronically. Warranties, guarantees, and so forth should be saved as long as they're good. But once again, keep in mind, just note on the upper right-hand corner when to throw it away. Or you may even want to file it by when it can be thrown away, because those things tend to bog down our records quite a bit. Anything that has to do with medical records and insurance payments, I urge you to hang on to and keep with your tax records, because that's a rat's nest, the whole medical insurance and health expenses. Those usually are complicated for people. Have I answered your question? Okay. Has everyone been able to come up with some kinds of documents that you need to file? Let's go on then to the lower part of the list. What categories are going to work? And we've talked about a couple of different examples of that. What categories will work best for the documents you need to file? And if you can give some examples, if anyone would like to share an example or two, it would really help. We heard about one, administrative. Okay, training. Great example. Training that you've taken. Yes?
Computer application instructions.
Yes. Right. Your Norton antivirus software stuff. And of course, you need to have all the CDs that come with that in one place you can get at too, in case you need to reinstall the program or refer to a registration number to get technical help and so forth. Another good example. Yes?
Travel documents.
Yes, okay, that's a very good example too. Travel or administrative, as we heard earlier.
Business cards.
Oh, there's a real sticking point, isn't it?
What do you say?
Business cards. They're a nuisance, aren't they? In fact, you can even buy software now to scan them into word processing. And it may well be worth it because people are constantly changing them. You're always getting new business cards. Rolodexes work, but they're cumbersome. They get outdated, and it's one more thing that you have to go through. I prefer to staple business cards to whatever documentation I have from the company and just keep it all together in the file. But that might not suit your style. So you may want to have a whole separate Rolodex file. Yes?
Your contact list
Yeah.
in your computers. But that's just one thing. I have a question.
Yes.
At the end of several of these lists, you say, keep up the good work. Can you give us some comments on of managing your time to keep up the good work?
Oh boy.
Because,
okay.
you know, I mean, like you say,
Sure.
you have to keep, that's the problem. I mean, all of these ideas are wonderful, and you go back and you arrange, but then, you know, it's time to get to the action box. It's time to file the stuff. It's time to do all that.
Okay, actually, you're leading right into what I want to go on to next. So you obviously have the right instincts here. Is everyone comfortable with what they've come up with for their personal filing system? Do you feel like you have something you can go back and do? That's what I want to see heads nodding to, hopefully. All right, let's go on then. I have a couple more tips on automated tools. Actually, I think we've talked about most of this, but I'll just touch on them, and then I want to go on to this question about, okay, how exactly do we keep this maintenance up? File Folder Organizer is a utility that I already described to you. It's on page 6 of your handout packet. You can read more about it if you would like to. Scan, disk, and defrag. Does everybody know how to do that? It's an accessory on Windows to use scan, disk, and defrag. What that will do is keep your machine running quickly as possible. And if you don't know how to do it, I urge you to look into it, and you can even set your computer to do that up automatically. But a lot of the frustration that people run into is their computer takes so long to come up, or programs take so long to start, that it's very frustrating. If you scan and defrag regularly, it will cut down on that. You can also do computer file cleanup. Now, That's something to save for a day after you get yourself a little bit organized. But we do have one suggestion for you on page 8. You will find instructions, and it's actually also continues on, Startup Folder Cleaner. Basically, you don't have to read this now. Let me describe it to you real simply. Your computer has programs that automatically start up every time you turn it on. Virus protection software is a good example. You always want that running. But if you click on the startup icon on your computer, you'll see that a bunch of other programs may be starting up that you didn't want to start up. Every time you install new software, very often that software automatically embeds itself in your startup menu. So for example, one of the tax utilities I use is It's Deductible, which by the way is a great utility. But when I installed it on my machine, it put itself in the startup folder. So I'm running It's Deductible and I turn my taxes in April. But it's still on there, I found out, in August. So check your startup menu regularly and just delete the shortcut to get these programs to stop starting up. You won't delete the program, it'll still be there, but the automatic startup won't happen and your computer will come up faster. Everybody with me on that one? That's a good tool. Using filters and blocking email, we've talked about. I think we've also talked about email organizers because I jumped ahead of myself, but message rules and boilermates are both good for those. Now let's talk about weeding on the job, the question we just had. How do you do all this? Please do not go back to your office and take everything that should be put away and put it out in the hallway and then think you're going to organize it all today. That's not going to happen. I suggest strongly that you start slow. So let's take our first volunteer who said she wanted the top of her desk to be clean. You could start as a goal clearing one section every day or clearing one section every week, just enough to keep yourself going. If you try and do it all at once, it's just like starting with that new Palm Pilot or Day Planner in January. You take up so much time organizing it and then you don't have the time to keep it going. Don't worry about the past. Just start being organized today and look forward to the future. Once you're feeling on top of things, then start weeding through stuff in the back. However, if you do have things that are in your office right now that you know you could recycle, just getting it out of the way might feel good. Establish the system that works best for you. You're probably going to find certain elements of what we discussed today are good, others may not be good. Automated tools only are good if they help your situation. And that's why, for example, I've cautioned you about File Folder Organizer. For me, that would slow me down more than it would speed me up because I'd have to enter in all that information. I feel the same way about Quicken. You know, I'm writing the check, the computer doesn't know that, I have to enter the information in. So for me, that's not helpful. Yes?
I had a question. I came in late. So
Okay.
I may have gone to, but in terms of weeding out,
Yes.
the government, you may have already gone over, there's certain rules on how long certain things have to be kept.
Yes.
Like time to be ready has to be kept so long. There's a actual law. You already go over that?
No, and let me repeat your question just to make sure that it gets on the video cast. What about things that by law are supposed to be kept for certain lengths of time? And that's the only reason you're keeping it. You know, let's establish that to begin with. If you need it for something else, fine. If it has an expiration date where you no longer need to keep it and you don't need it for anything else, file it according to the expiration date, and you may want to flag it, as we discussed with the conference organizing tool, with whatever it is, just in case. And you can even just write it up in the upper corner of the document. If it's something that you're keeping for another purpose, but it has an expiration date, write that in the upper right-hand corner. Throw out, you know, in 2006 or whatever it is, and then do that. We suggest that you do your big cleanups on a regular basis, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, maybe at the beginning of the new fiscal year, which I understand is tomorrow. Good time to throw stuff out. Have I answered your question adequately? Are we okay to keep going?
Yeah, I just wanted to get it correct.
Okay, okay. One more thing I want to say about keeping your weeding process going, and then we're going to go on to answer more questions or discuss your specific situations. Once you have done some organizing, reward yourself. Remember I said maybe the most important thing that you did today was to write down what you were going to do with your extra time once you were more organized? Be sure and do that. I know one person who works at USA Today. I do a lot of presentations at Gannett and USA Today. And every time she finishes a project, she schedules a massage for herself. That's a good reward. You'll also feel rewarded by that vast empty space on your desk where you can neatly put things, but keeping it up is the hard part. Anybody have any further questions on paper or electronic document management? Yes?
I know you said to have everything once and decide where it's going to go, but I have a really good system and I'm perfectly happy with the system.
Great.
But what tends to happen is I'll get new mail or new something, and I'll just sort of throw it all in the pile and think, I don't have time to deal with this now. I'll come back to it. And, after a few weeks of that, I have no idea what's on the desk anymore.
Okay, the question is, what do you do if you have a system that's working just fine for you, but you get backlogged with mail every now and then, and before you know it, you're drowning in mail? The idea behind Handle It Once isn't that you only touch it once, but that you make your decision about it once. And so you're asking, what do I do about those decisions I just can't make now? My best advice for that is to try and stem the flow before it comes in the door. If you really don't have time to make the decisions. There are lots of time management tools that are out there that might be helpful. One perennial suggestion is to schedule a certain time each day to keep on top of that stuff. Take it into the ladies' room with you so nobody can call you and interrupt you while you're going through it. Take it home with you, which I do not suggest. You go through it on your commute, whenever you stop at a red light or you're sitting on the metro. All those things can work, but basically there are times when you just get backed up and you're just going to need to schedule in time to do it. If nothing else, you could jot down on your calendar mail review anytime the pile gets over the top of your inbox. Yes?
I have something to say. I know somebody would say, I don't take calls all day. Between 1 and 3, I do my calls, and that's all. So, can you say, today, you look at the overall work you have to do, and then you say, today, if I get this, and this done, I'll be happy. And tomorrow, I'll see what else I can get done.
Yeah, the question is, it can be difficult to limit the time that you're available. Sometimes you're not going to be able to limit how much time you can devote to this or how much you can schedule to devote to it. Should you be satisfied with gradual progress? Yes. In fact, I really think you're better off working at it a few minutes every day or an hour a week if you can than to try and do it all at once because, as I said, you're going to burn out. The idea is to institute a system, not to go back and do a major house cleaning, but to institute a system that starts to work, that only takes a little bit of your time every day. It's harder. In fact, a little bit of research on that. Who knows? Maybe this research came from here. It takes 21 days to establish a new habit. It takes 3 days to break it. Isn't that rotten? So you're going to have to go back and do the TRAF system, toss, read or refer, action, or file for 21 days before it becomes a habit. But if you let it go for 3 days, you have to start all over again. That's the bad news. So, good luck. Any other questions? Yes? The question is, how long does a document stay in the recycle bin if you have deleted it from your computer? Until you empty the recycle bin or until your computer crashes, never to rise from the dust again. So if you have put something into recycle, unless you have your computer set up to automatically empty it every so often, you have to go in and manually select it to delete from the recycle bin. Or it's sometimes they'll have limits where they sort of spill over if it gets too full, but what you usually notice first is that your computer is really, really slow, and emptying the recycle bin is one of the things you can do to speed it up a little bit. Any other questions? Yes?
Is there a particular one of those that you recommend, or that you know other people feel more strongly about?
As a matter of fact, I've looked into some of the systems, and I love them all because I think it's fascinating the way different people think and how they organize things. The Cubby system is very highly thought of. I recommend it strongly. You might like the one that Anthony Robbins has come up with. Is anyone familiar with that? I can't think of what it's called right now, but he's another one of the organizational gurus. That's not a bad one either. You really just have to look and pick and choose the little pieces that you like of them, though. For example, we've heard from a lady who doesn't really need the trash system. She just needs a way to schedule in looking through her mail. So, take that away from it. Anybody else? Is everyone ready to go back and organize now? Know a new way to do it? Okay. Thank you very much for your attention, and best of luck, everybody. You bet. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. For the diehards that stuck it out, it will pay off.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Yes.
I did this. He wants, every class I take,